Welcome to the recent episode of the Dynasty Gambit. Joined here, of course, Ben McCown and Austin Jacobson is with me here. And this episode is going to be an interesting one because we've done this in the past with the 2024 class at the end of the season to take the rookie draft and redo everything to get kind of a new rookie board to see what happened and where new guys had risen and some guys had fallen. So join us as we go through the 2025 class. And Austin, I'm fumbling over my words. It's 5:45 in the morning here. I know it's the same time for you. I've got my coffee loaded up right here. So just we changed our schedules because we have little ones at home, and this is honestly the most ideal time for us to record. But I'm excited to get into this one. We especially now 5 weeks of the season, we have a lot of risers and fallers, and I'm excited to see who you take at 101 because it's pretty spicy. It's not actually spicy, but it's spicy if you ask somebody what it would have been 2 months ago.
Yeah. Well, so I think that at this point, there's a lot to think about, and I think you're looking at which player do you like long term, which player do you like to win right now. But to me, with 101, I think you're always looking for the player that gives you the most value. And I think at this point, I was locked and loaded on this pick a bit more before this weekend. But I'm going to take Emeka Egbuka to start the draft. I think that when you're looking at from a talent standpoint, there is almost no one that has stood out more than Egbuka in the whole NFL through the first 6 weeks. And so he's really broken out. I think he's definitely the front runner for Rookie of the Year. And from a value standpoint, being able to get a wide receiver is typically going to be somebody that's going to more easily hold long-term value than running back. I thought about just sticking with Jeanty here, but I think that, if you look at the way the community is valuing Egbuka right now, he's right there with JSN and CeeDee Lamb. I mean, it's amazing the way he's ascended. I still think it's maybe a little higher, his overall value. Keep Check Cut has him as wide receiver 8 and basically in the same tier as CeeDee Lamb, which to me is a little bit high. But, I think you're drafting value, and I just think that you can get a lot more for him than you can for Jeanty right now. I think it's just the fact of the matter. So I think it's the smart value pick at 101. I know I've always been saying, see, who can you flip him for these last few weeks on shows. But it's hard not to buy into the hype. I mean, the week 5 game kind of really solidified to me, this guy's a big play guy. Baker trusts him over what at the time was a fully healthy Godwin, and then Godwin got banged up again. But now we have the concern with the injury. So Egbuka got a little banged up. It looks like a hamstring. He's going to get an MRI, but signs point towards it being probably just a short-term absence, maybe a week or two. If it's confirmed that that's longer and he's going on IR, that could change things. But for now, I think that's a blip on the radar and shouldn't affect your long-term valuing of Egbuka. So I'll keep him at 101, even despite the injury.
Yeah, I mean, just as a short piece to add on to that, I don't think the situation with Evans being towards the end of his career, Godwin having a nebulous, even return possibly in 2025, let alone if we even think that he's going to, does he even have another year on the Bucs next year? I don't know if he ends up becoming a free agent. But Egbuka, the sky is the limit at this point. And when you look at the rest of the rookie board, he is like the proven points now that we see on your team.
Yeah.
And I would much rather have a long-term dynasty wide receiver that's now being ranked up in the top 10 in dynasty than, and Ashton Jeanty is going to be fine, which that will be my next pick. But I think when you're taking Egbuka, there's something safe about having a wide receiver for the future. But before we talk about Ashton Jeanty, I wanted to just ask you where your thoughts of, like, in a startup right now, if you took Emeka Egbuka, where would he go? Like, what round do you think he would go in, and behind what wide receivers? Because to me, I think I have him in like a half tier behind like Drake London and JSN.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely in the second round somewhere. It's just a matter of whether it's how much you like him. Is he early second or late second? I think, to me, I'd probably have him more towards the back half of the second round, because if we're talking super flex, right? There's probably still 8 or 9 quarterbacks I'd take ahead of him, and then I'd probably have him right around wide receiver 10, and then I'd take Bijan and Gibbs probably ahead of him. So, yeah, probably somewhere around 208, 209 would be, I would be comfortable with him taking, but I would take him ahead of Jeanty in a startup, which is another way to think about when you're doing a rookie redraft. So yeah,
absolutely. And that's something to keep in mind when you're doing kind of these exercises, is like, does that rookie mock fall in line with what you would do in a startup? Because it has to. Speaking of which, I took Ashton Jeanty at the 102, and we're looking at things from a dynasty lens, right? If we were looking at things on lunch, and somehow, well, I guess the last couple of weeks have been pretty smashed for him, because he's at running back 10 in sleeper rankings right now. But yeah, I mean, when we're looking at things at a dynasty lens, it's going to be Jeanty at 102 compared to another running back at 102 if we're looking at things at a 2025 lens for sure. So he's got the draft capital. They're bought in as far as having hit their star running back, but right now the situation in Las Vegas is not pretty. The offensive line is not built the way that they want it to be to sustain a star running back like Jeanty, and they're going to have a situation they're going to have to figure out at quarterback with Geno Smith. So, lock in Jeanty at 102 for me. I think you have to go on your priors, and none of that really changes when you're talking about the long-term built-in contract that he has of the fifth-year option with the Raiders, and the likelihood is he's going to be fine. So, what do you feel about that, Austin?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was some concern early weeks. I think week 2, 3, even 4 wasn't. I guess 2 and 3 were shaky, and then really the last 3 weeks. Week 4 he had a really good week, and then 5 and 6 he was pretty solid as well. Yeah. So I think he's kind of hitting his stride. I think he's going to be fine. I actually think he's reached the point where, if we had done this a couple weeks ago, I think you might have seen Hampton going above him. But I think now it's, I think with the Hampton injury combined with Jeanty, kind of, we've seen some of the ceiling potential and some big plays from him. So yeah, I'm very comfortable taking. I think it's a clear top 2 right now between Jeanty and Egbuka. And so I'd be fine taking it either way, but I think it's a clear, easy pick at 2 if Egbuka goes 1.
Yeah, I had to look again because the breakout game was pretty impressive. It was 3 touchdowns against the Bears, and I just remember being at home, like getting sleeper notifications, like, oh, another Ashton Jeanty touchdown, and it was really awesome to see. So let's see here, and who do you have at the 103, Austin?
I went back and forth on this, but I'm going to still take Hampton. I think that we just saw his season as a workhorse. We saw 24.9 and 27.5 PPR points in week 3 and 4, and looked like he could be a PPR monster. I mean, 8 weeks of 5+ catches. It's really a shame with the injury. I do think the injury does. I mean, it does. This is a little bit more than the Egbuka one, because we're looking at, they're saying at least 4 games and probably longer.
Yeah.
because obviously he's on IR, so he has to miss 4 games. But there is a report earlier this week that they're expecting it to be longer than 4 games.
Mhm.
So when you start to talk about approaching a third to half a whole season, that does start to bump value down a little bit. But I actually do really like. I think we've seen nothing but good things from Hampton so far, and I think he's a great buy low right now in Dynasty. And I thought about Judkins here. That was the other one I was thinking about, but I still think that Hampton is a tier above for me. And now I think that with the injury, they're in about the same tier. But I really think that unless I'm in a desperate position on a win now team, I'm not swapping Hampton straight up for Judkins. I need a plus. And so for that reason, I'm taking Hampton above Judkins.
Yeah. I mean, the first round draft cap still means something, right? Again, we just talked about it with Jeanty, but it's the contract that they get. And do they get the 5th-year option with a second round contract? I can't remember. But the thing for Hampton is they believe in what he is on that team. My concern, I guess, and it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out, is if the Jets continue to just crash and burn. And I don't think it's really the move for them to make. But if they go after Breece Hall, and they decide to have it as a running back by committee with Breece Hall and Omarion Hampton towards the end of the season, I don't know. Again, that's just all speculation. And if they bring in a veteran guy in a trade like Alvin Kamara or somebody else, I'm not really as worried with Hampton, just because Hampton's got the youth on his side, and he's their guy for the future. So
yeah, it would probably be a rest of season deal anyway.
Yeah.
But Kamani Vidal looked pretty good last week. It was Miami, so there's a grain of salt. But I'm not sure they need to make a big move. And so that's good news for Hampton managers as well, because they'd rather just kind of, if they can just get by, then when he comes back, you can expect a workhorse again. But exactly. No 5th-year option for second round pick. So that is an advantage for Hampton and Jeanty and Egbuka, all 3 being first round picks versus some of these other guys that are probably going to go soon that are second round picks. So
yeah, for sure. So you just you didn't take him, and it was very understandable given the circumstances of the other 2 guys that went ahead of him. But I'm going to go ahead and take Quinshon Judkins. And I think this was we included him on the thumbnail because he, to me, was the biggest riser besides Egbuka in terms of where he was being drafted preseason to the point of now. Obviously, that whole Cleveland Brown situation is going to also change as time goes on. The quarterback situation with Dylan Gabriel is not going to be long term, in my opinion. But they have a star in Quinshon, and it was so funny in the off season with everyone being so worried about there was so much really to honestly be worried about with the situation legally.
Yeah.
But then once the charges got dropped, it was pretty, the writing was kind of on the wall that the NFL could take a couple of games or take some other forms of disciplinary action, but it wasn't going to affect Quinshon long term. And we see that he's got such great burst. I mean, I think there was a lot of things that people were worried about with him coming out of college, that he doesn't have the speed, he doesn't really breaks tackles very well. He's not like the game breaker that TreVeyon Henderson is, which we're going to talk about him later. But Quinshon is just he just seems like the pro NFL running back that, he's the guy that you want as your RB1. And it's pretty hard to get him right now. I ended up selling him, and I had shared this deal with you a couple weeks ago or a week ago with Dalton, 2 firsts for Quinshon. And I still kind of felt icky about it because, even though 2 firsts is the process, I love Quinshon. I think he's going to be a guy to build around on your dynasty lineups. And that's one where it's these top 4 guys, I have no problem with really investing into, whether it is, again, you're talking a first and a second or a first and a solid player. I want, Egbuka, Jeanty, Hampton, and Judkins.
Yeah.
All right. So who do you have here?
Yeah, I think that's
5 Austin. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah. I mean, it was like I think there's a clear top 2 and then a clear 3 and 4 for me. So
Yeah.
then it's kind of I think there's a next group here. I
Mhm.
am gonna go. I was close between actually a few people, but I'm gonna go with Tetairoa McMillan. I think we've seen a good, solid floor. Like he had 8 or more targets in each of his first 5 games, and then last week he had his first 8 target game, but he had 2 touchdowns. So I mean,
Yeah, first 2
he's been
touchdowns, actually.
targeted early and often by Bryce Young, and now we're seeing his ability in the red zone. There were definitely some in the first few weeks, some opportunities in the red zone where throws were missed or he didn't make a catch. He's had some issues with drops. He had one drop last week where it ended up being an interception. So there's just some early rust, but he's very solid. Really what we were hoping for. He's a solid wide receiver too, with wide receiver 1 upside. And so I think there's been a lot of people that have. I think there's less separation between him and Egbuka than a lot of people think, right? And I think that I wouldn't mind, with the Egbuka hype, being able to get, Tet McMillan in a first. I think that would be a fine process move here. I still like him a lot. Seems like he is the number 1 of the future in Carolina. The questions are just about Bryce Young and is he going to be there long term? Is he going to be able to turn the corner and take the next step? Looked pretty good on Sunday. But it was the Cowboys defense. They made everyone look good. So it's kind of hard to, the jury's kind of out on that, but the talent is there for McMillan, and, no matter who's at quarterback, I expect him to be producing for years to come. So I think he's a very solid, safe pick here at 5.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what you're speaking on too with the Egbuka to Tet down tier, or what might not have even felt like a down tier preseason. Savvy owners are likely not to like, they'll look a little bit deeper into that and say, I don't know that there's a first difference between them, but if you can get somebody that is not paying attention and you can get a first with Tet McMillan, I mean, we know Tetairoa, big pineapple. We know that he's going to get there, or at least we have the projection that he'll get there. And I don't know that Egbuka will always stay the wide receiver 1 of this class. That it could be back and forth between those 2. So
yeah.
As far as the 106, and you know what, we were actually, I was just talking about this in the Discord with some people, but Cam Ward, and again, we're talking about process and just the idea that you want a quarterback in Superflex that was taken at 101 in the first round. I think he has fallen to where he needs to behind the guys that have produced. And they just fired Brian Callahan. They want to start making a move now to make some change on this team. They're invested over at least the next 4 years with Cam Ward. And we know the talent is there. It's just the situation has been a little iffy. But I think for Cam Ward to fall to the 106, when we were talking preseason, he was, getting up there with Omarion Hampton, with Tetairoa McMillan at the 102. I think this is a healthy regression for him to see. And honestly, I don't know if he's exactly the buy low guy I want right now. But if we start to see some things develop, or, and I also don't know that fantasy owners are going to be easy to part ways with Cam Ward at this point, just because we're trying to project and see what's going to happen over the next, 4, 8 games and see what really happens with his career. But I think Cam Ward, you got to take a shot on him at this point, with him being the 101 rookie QB. It's kind of just that process check.
Yeah, this is way too high for Cam Ward for me. I did a little pre-draft rankings, and pre this draft, and I had him at 13. I have not liked what I saw at all from Cam Ward. I see some pretty glaring deficiencies. I mean, he could turn it around. He hasn't finished higher than QB 21 yet through 6 starts. He has 3 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. He's shown basically no rushing upside. He has 2 games of less than 115 passing yards. He had 1 game with over 225 passing yards. I just think there doesn't seem to be really any upside. I think that the first 6 games of Will Levis's career with the same team were much better. And so I'm pretty much out on Cam Ward right now. I think that if I can trade him away for Jaxson Dart plus, I'm doing that all day long. And I actually think Jaxson Dart has passed Cam Ward for me in Dynasty.
Now, I should say, I was very quick to hit that button. There's only one player in this position I probably would have taken over him, and that is Tyler Warren. But
I'm going
to let that one.
I like Jaxson Dart, and I'm tempted to take Jaxson Dart, and I actually thought I was going to take him here at 107 because I thought you were going to take Warren, but I have to take Warren here. I think that Tyler Warren, I almost took him over McMillan. I think that he is, he's been everything we wanted him to be as a tight end. I think that, he hasn't had quite like a Brock Bowers level impact yet. I mean, the volume hasn't been quite the same, but just very solid production.
Although he is the TE1.
Yeah, very solid production. So depending on format, he's TE1 or TE2, and he's been very solid. I think in a non-premium, I believe he is tight end 1. I think Jake Ferguson is tight end 1, and if there's any kind of premium on top. But there's definitely been, so the volume is not quite as high as like Brock Bowers was last year, but I mean, very consistent yardage totals, very consistent usage. Daniel Jones is looking for him. He's honestly been kind of the first read a lot of the time in that offense. And, I think he's clearly a top 3 dynasty tight end at this point and a cornerstone piece. And so people that ended up getting him either 111, 112, or even sometimes I saw him going 201, 202, I think got a major steal here. And I think that he is a great value and very close to, I think, McBride and Bowers as far as his dynasty value at this point.
Yeah, and I think even if it's, we're doing this from the lens of half to 0.75 point tight end premium, but even in non-tight end premium, he's not going to fall out of the first round.
Yeah, no.
So, all right. Well, I know you were looking that you were probably going to take Jaxson Dart. Things pivoted, but I am going to go ahead and take Jaxson Dart here. And, just we have seen opposite of Cam Ward, right? He didn't get to the 101. He was the QB2 in the draft, being picked 25th overall. And he has looked the part for the Giants. I mean, you look at his last game against the Eagles, putting up 23.6 points. He had a rushing touchdown and a passing touchdown in that game. Him and the guy we're going to talk about later, Cam Skattebo, just they looked like the guys who the Giants wanted to take that draft, and there's a reason why they traded up to take him. And we have seen just the decisiveness that you want to see from you don't usually see from a rookie quarterback, and you wanted to see come from this guy. And there was a lot of issues that people had preseason, pre-combine, even when we looked at his tape, that he was a first read guy at Ole Miss, and there was a lot of concerns that he wouldn't adjust to NFL defenses. But it has been the opposite exactly, that he handled the Philadelphia Eagles defense. The New Orleans Saints, even though they are not great, they still are a very chippy team that will fight for the win and have proven to knock off some playoff expected teams. And then he also handled the Chargers. I think there was something, so he did not have a good game against the Saints. Still put up 17 points, but so pretty decent. But there was a stat that was like the 2 quarterbacks that he knocked off, and it was like Justin Herbert and Jalen Hurts. And the team that he lost to was Spencer Rattler. But it was very impressive so far to this season, Austin. I mean, he's started 3 games, and he's 2-1, as we've talked about. It's really incredible. So Jaxson Dart, another great riser that you were getting towards the end of the first round, early in the second round.
So just comparing Cam Ward versus Dart for a minute. So Cam Ward, through 6 starts so far this year, he's averaging 7.9 fantasy points per game. Jaxson Dart, through 3 starts, is averaging 9.5 fantasy points per game from his rushing. So he's averaging more points per game from his rushing than Cam Ward is total. And I think Dart is clearly past Cam Ward at this point. I would trade Ward straight up for Jaxson Dart easily. I think that you could make the argument at this point, from what we've seen from Dart, that he probably should be up more 104, 105. I think that I don't want to get. I think there's still some questions. There's still, maybe this is just a quick start. I just think that rushing floor is, it's what made Drake May such a good prospect. It's what, I think that there's a lot of potential with him there, and it seems like the team is rallying around him. I would definitely take Dart above Ward, but I think that getting him at 108 is still fine. I think it's still a fine spot for him. And I really like him a lot. And if you got him, there's a few drafts I got him in like mid-second. So I think that he's one of the biggest values right now, especially in Superflex.
Yeah. I don't think we have to belabor the point, but I think the thing with Ward is it's just like any other rookie quarterback that has been failed. I mean, Bryce Young, that's the floor, right? And we hope that he doesn't. Now we're starting to see Bryce Young kind of turn it around a little bit, but we are seeing Cam Ward go through this like Bryce Young arc of going through multiple offenses, and that's the concern. But I think if you had talked about this a couple months ago, it would have been crazy, but it's not crazy anymore. Jaxson Dart has proven to be the guy in that offense, and of course we'll see who ends up getting the crayon eater, as some people have called him.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm gonna take this might be a little higher than some people will take him, but I'm gonna take his teammate right here. I'm gonna take Cam Skattebo at 109. I think it's he has produced, and it's hard to really knock it. I mean, it's very productive. He's gotten the lion's share of the workload. Tyrone Tracy, started the year as the one, got hurt. Skattebo came in, and then Tracy returned, right? I mean, Tracy came back last week, barely played because Skattebo has taken over that backfield. I would expect him to be the guy going forward. 3 touchdowns last week. Even going into last week, I already was saying I'd take him 1 for 1 over Henderson. And I think at this point, after last week, it's like, I think that's no longer a hot take. I think a lot of people are on board with that. I like what I've seen from him. I'm not sure. I'm not sure he's going to have a 10-year NFL career the way he's playing. It might be a shorter term bet. He's throwing himself into people and lowering his head and getting extra yards, and it's fun to watch. So there's definitely injury risk with the way the play style he's playing with, but man, I mean, him and Dart on the Giants have got to be giving those fans a lot of hope. And I think that, especially if I'm on a team here picking late first that's, it's trying to win now, Skattebo is a guy that I really like. And it's tough because really everybody after this that we're going to be talking about is not producing right now. So he's kind of the last guy that's like really producing. And that's why I think that putting him here at what is this, 108 is a good, good 109 is a good spot for him.
Yeah. And it's exactly like you just said. All of the guys in the first nine picks, again, outside of Cam Ward, have really produced, right? But like we're combining our preseason priors with what we've seen so far on the field, and it has built out the draft board. And this is kind of what we would expect to see now happen as things start to rise, start to fall. And you're absolutely right. Everybody kind of beyond this is kind of at a point where we're just kind of projecting to see where they'll kind of end up as the next 12 games end up going on and into 2026. So the next pick that I'm going to make here is going to be, and again, we're just going based off of our priors, but I still have to have the hope that TreVeyon Henderson ends up making into that next tier of running backs. At this point, him and Cam Skattebo have put themselves right back to back. And, we were talking about, you just talked about it right now. We've been talking about it in our server. I have a bet on the line right now. And it's losing because Chev and I were on the boat of TreVeyon Henderson will end up with more points per game end of season than Cam Skattebo, and that's losing right now. And I don't know that Henderson is going to come back from it, considering Vrabel does just not trust the rookies at this point. There was some weird speculation that I was seeing on Reddit, and somebody shared with me that he's not reading the play calls correctly, and so he's kind of falling more in the doghouse for Vrabel. But that's all just speculation, right? It's just at this point he's got Ramondre and Antonio Gibson. In my opinion, should not be starting over TreVeyon, but Vrabel and Josh McDaniels are not huge fans of starting rookies, and we know what we saw in college from TreVeyon at Ohio State. He basically had earned himself, top 5 rookie draft pick in the off season, but we're just not going to see it right now until he finally starts to. I think where he really lacks is in his pass protection. That's where he doesn't get a lot of trust from the coaches at this point. And if he continues to improve on that as the season goes on and during next off season, he should start to really take away the RB1 position for the team. Again, he's got that second round draft cap, so he at least has that 4 years with the team, and pretty solid salary coming from the team. So they at least believe in him enough, but we're just not seeing it on the field right now, and it's not turning into production.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Antonio Gibson. He tore his ACL, so that's one less person in front of him. But he didn't play last game, and still Henderson didn't get much run. So it's been disappointing. It doesn't seem Stevenson hasn't been particularly effective. He's fumbled, but it's just been hard for Henderson to get opportunities. I will say, I mean, he had 11 touches on Sunday. It's his third time that he's had double-digit touches, so he's getting some work. But he just hasn't done a lot with it. But I do think that he's the type of player that he could have. He could with 9, 10, 11 touches, he could have some games where he comes out and has a 70-yard touchdown run or takes a screen pass to the house, and the whole narrative on Henderson changes, and then he becomes a guy that you can't sell. So I still like him as a hold right now. I wouldn't panic as long as I wouldn't be wanting to start him necessarily if you have other options right now. But I'm not too worried about him long term. I do think you just have had. I mean, you have a guy like Jaxson Dart, that's the quarterback that's producing right now. Skattebo, who's producing right now. I've jumped him, but really, I don't feel that much differently about him than I did Henderson than I did pre-draft. I'm not too worried about him yet, but it's just been disappointing to see the usage so far.
Yeah, and the other thing too, Austin, is we really covered a lot of the meat and bones with this first round here. I think as we start to go into the second round, we'll start to make some picks and kind of give our insight. But it's going to be the same game. It's going to be really just these guys haven't shown out on the field yet. We're hoping that we could see something by end of season. Who do you have at 111 here?
I think at 111, I have a guy that I think is in kind of the same boat as Henderson, and that's RJ Harvey. I still like him the same way I did prior to the season, but he's just been eased in. He hasn't had a ton of work. We saw one game where he got 19 touches in a blowout after they had taken Dobbins out of the game. He got a lot of his touches, but he showed some flashes in that game. I think that this is a guy that's going to be. I think there's a good chance he's a workhorse running back next year. And this is something I was thinking about. On a rebuilder, let's say you took Skattebo in the second round on a rebuilder. Would you tear down? Would you trade Skattebo for Harvey in a second, maybe something like that? There could be an opportunity to buy low on a guy like Harvey. So I like Harvey here late first.
Yeah, I think preseason that would have been a deal I would have smashed all day, right?
Right.
But I think it's a good process move because Cam Skattebo will be solid for the Giants over the next couple of seasons. But then we think that we're projecting Harvey to be better than what he is right now, taking over that room. So, and you're getting a second on top. So I think that's a good process pick on that, Austin. Here, as far as the 112, I have, and this one is going to pain me, but it's got to be Travis Hunter. And it's been, he's the other guy we put on the thumbnail because, oh, hang on a second. We got to make this not snake, but I'll change that. Anyway, so with Travis Hunter, it's been disappointing because the Jacksonville Jaguars offense has just been disappointing, right? There was also just a lot of concerns in general. Okay, I think this is, say, wide receiver 1. That is odd. It should not be that way. But there was concerns of how much he was going to play on defense versus offense, and how much would that affect his ability to play as wide receiver. I don't think it's really that as much of the issue. I think the issue is Trevor Lawrence is your quarterback, and Brian Thomas Jr. has finally started to get the ball rolling in 2025 season. I think we saw some really interesting usage and much better in the Kansas City game, where he had some pretty cool highlight reel catches. But at this point, I just don't feel safe with Travis Hunter being in the same tier as Emeka Egbuka and Tetairoa McMillan. He's just not there for me. And so I don't. He's kind of that guy. We were talking about it, a couple of weeks ago, whether it was in the Discord server or in a league somewhere. But I think this was on this show. But do you sell for a first, for a 27 first? It's if we project that first to be early to mid, I think the answer is probably yes. But you have to have hope that he turns it around, and anybody that invested in him, I was luckily able to not have to worry about investing in him in the top 4 picks, but there were a lot of people taking him at 102. And so that's kind of hurting right now, as you're starting to see guys like Egbuka, who were at the 108, 19. They're starting to produce much better than him and have a much better outlook.
Yeah, I think that, we were worried about him not getting enough playing time, and I think he's played as much as we possibly could hope. But he just hasn't been getting the ball, and when he hasn't been doing a lot with it. So, hopefully that'll change. But yeah, he's been definitely disappointing here through the first third of the season. At 201, I'm going to take Matthew Golden. I think that what we've been seeing with Matthew Golden is a lot of big play potential. Pretty much everything we could hope for from that perspective early on. I liked a lot of what I've seen last week against Cincinnati. He looked pretty good. He led the team in receiving, had a couple long catches. Jordan Love seems to like him. He's had some, his first 2 games, he didn't do much, but there were some near misses for touchdowns. Some overthrows, some balls he maybe should have caught. And so I think that the stats don't quite bear out how much involved in the Packers offense he's been. And I like him. I think that he's somebody that was, somewhat underrated going into the season. And we haven't seen a ton from him yet, but I think there's every opportunity for him to become the wide receiver 1 in this offense. And, I think he's a pretty solid play here in the second when you're talking about a lot of unproven guys. Is it right around where he went going into the season? And I think it's really not much has changed for me on how I view Golden at this point.
Yeah. And yeah, I think if you would ask me, prior to this week, it might have been a little different, but the usage that he got in this last game against Cincinnati was much better. I think we're starting to see him get really involved in the offense. So I like that pick there, Austin. Let's see here. I did try to change it. I'd have to close out of this thing, but we'll just keep it the snake right now. It doesn't really change very much. But at the 202, as I'm looking through the list here, I'm just going to take, and we're talking again, half point tight end premium and 0.75 tight end premium. I'm going to take Colston Loveland here. Well, I guess. Let's see here. But let's go ahead and just take a look here. With Colston Loveland, I think the concern at the beginning of the season was he wasn't getting worked in into the in training camp with the offense, and so we didn't even think he was going to be starting the first couple of games or being worked in as much as they probably would have really been working in Cole Kmet. He got a couple of targets this last week from Kaleb, 3 targets, 2 receptions, 11 yards. So, he's getting on the field a little bit more. We knew it was going to be a much slower burn with Loveland than it was going to be with Warren, but they spent top 10 draft cap on him. Yeah. Like they're going to work him into the offense, and I think that Chicago is still working on what exactly the offense is going to look like. Last night against the Commanders didn't look as pretty. They got the win, but I have Rome on a few of my teams, and he ended up losing out on a touchdown because of a penalty, and they were just a pretty, just as far as disciplined team, it was not there last night, and I think Ben Johnson's going to have a lot to figure out with that, and going back to the training room with them. But Loveland, I'm not worried about his future. Just 2025 was going to be a punt.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned the top 10 capital. I think that's the thing that really keeps him up there. I definitely think Warren has separated himself from Loveland. I think they went back to back in a lot of drafts, but I still think Loveland will be, he's, if you liked him pre-draft, it's not that he's been terrible. It's just that he hasn't really gotten a lot of opportunities yet. And so he's a wait and see right now.
And that's a 2-2, I think, compared to the 1-7. Warren is exactly where he needs to be, and Loveland is in early second where he needs to be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind that Loveland pick at all, but I actually do have another tight end above him, and I actually have Harold Fannin now as the T2 for this class.
Yeah, I know.
And so I think that we have seen
in the 80s.
Yeah, we've seen nothing but good things from Harold Fannin already. I think that he's shown himself to be, a potential long-term tight end there. And I was really high on Njoku going into the season. And I thought that I didn't think that the Fannin would necessarily affect him that much, but it really, in a lot of ways, Fannin's become the tight end 1, and now Njoku's a little banged up. And so I think going forward, I think he seems to be, one of their top options. And in fact, with Dillon Gabriel at quarterback, he's been their top receiving option. He got the touchdown the first week that Gabriel played, and then last week he had 10 targets, 7 catches, 81 yards. And I don't really see any reason why that won't continue. He's only 21 years old. He seems to be a focal point of this offense. And whether they continue with Gabriel or switch to Shedeur Sanders at some point, I think having a tight end that can do good things with yards after the catch is perfect for a rookie quarterback to dump off to. And I think that, he seems to be, good value rest of season and a good long-term value. So I really like getting Fannin here.
Yeah. I had done this exercise in preparation for this draft last week. It's been a little bit of a busy week, so I'm like looking back at this, and like the ADP is what's messing me up right now, because there's nobody pounding the table harder for Harold Fannin than myself, and I know that you're a big believer as well, Austin, putting him as your right now tight end 2. Look at that snap percentage. He doesn't fall below 60%. He's basically been on the field for greater than 60% of plays throughout the whole season. And you can even see there 85%, 79%, 80%. And as those, you can even see this last week, he had 7 receptions on 10 targets.
Yeah.
In tight end premium, that's easily, of course, scoring you double digits. So he's such a mainstay right now when it comes to the tight end landscape. And he's ranked right now, and I think, again, this is non-tight end premium. So 13th ranked tight end overall. I think those numbers change with a little bit of the stat change with tight end premium, but he is such a stud right now.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see here. I am going to go ahead looking at this board a little deeper now. But actually, you know what? While we're on the tight end train, I think I'm gonna have to do it. And this was the guy who, you know, he was actually kind of back and forth with me as the tight end 3 in this class between him and Fannin. Because the draft capital was there. I believe it was second round. Mason Taylor, you know, he definitely had his breakout game, or at least kind of a blip on the radar that hopefully we see more from him in the future. The problem is he's on the Jets offense, and the Jets are in just such turmoil right now. And I just don't think that they're prioritizing to give it to a young rookie TE tight end. Now, the game against Dallas, and if we had recorded this a week ago, I'd be having a much different tune. But you know, it's going to ebb and flow, and hopefully towards the end of the season we see a little bit more usage of him. But he has the talent, and I think that's what that game ended up showing us. So 17.7 points in this format that we have going on here, and again, he's going to be a decent tight end for years to come for the Jets, and I think he's the guy for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that something to think about with Mason Taylor is, I mean, I know that he had a bad game last week, but so, you know, they had like 40 total passing yards, so it's kind of hard. You have to kind of throw that one away. I think Garrett Wilson injury, there's no one to throw the ball to there. I expect they're facing the Panthers and the Bengals the next 2 weeks, which are have been pretty bad pass defenses. I think Fields will be okay. I don't know about him long term, but I think for the next 2 weeks, I think that, you know, there's opportunities to pass the ball, and I expect Taylor to be getting 8 to 10. There's no reason to think he won't get 8 to 10 targets each of the next 2 weeks. Who else is he going to throw the ball to? So, yeah, I think, you know, last week was rough, but we saw a glimpse of what he could be in the Cowboys game, and you know, they're not going to have Wilson for the next few weeks, so I expect him to be you know, productive. All right, next up, I'm going to go ahead and take Jacory Croskey-Merritt. I think at this point it's kind of a crapshoot on who you're taking, but you know, he seems to be the lead back there. He struggled a little bit on Monday night against the Bears, but I still think that, you know, they you know, there doesn't seem to be anybody else better in that room. We saw glimpses of what he could do in that Chargers game, and so I think at this point I'd like, you know, if I can get a guy that's clearly leading his backfield in touches, and has shown some upside in the middle of the second, I'm going to go ahead and take that. So that's my pick there.
Awesome. I think that's a very solid pick. I'm going to make one last pick, and I just want to let you guys know, like, we're still figuring out the schedule. As you can see, I'm actually, honestly, even in my FSAN polo here, I am going to work right after this. And we're going to be finishing up just with one last pick. And like Austin said, these are just kind of a bunch of dart throws at this point, because we've got a bunch of guys who, you know, you look at this list at the top here: Kaleb Johnson, Jayden Higgins, Luther Burden. I'm going to go ahead and take Luther Burden here. Yeah, that's where I wanted to go. Because again, we're just gonna keep saying it, but a guy with second round draft capital, who the Bears decided to invest in, was at one point looked at pre-2024 college season as the wide receiver 1, but you know, had a little bit more of a disappointing season that year. And I think he's going to start to get worked into the offense more, especially as, you know, we'll see what happens with DJ Moore towards the end of the season and what ends up happening with that. I don't have it right in front of me as far as his contract and where all that goes, but they have a belief in Luther Burden to take over as one of their playmakers in the offense at some point. Romo Dunze being more of their bigger, you know, receivers that they can move around all through the offense, but they're going to have this guy, you know, hopefully more of a Amon-Ra type role, being more of that Z receiver, and I just really, really have the hope that Luther Burden can take over in this offense. I think he has kind of fallen out of that range of, you know, we just talked about Egbuka, talked about Hunter and Golden as being those top 4. but it's kind of this murky wide receiver class beyond that. And, whether you take Tre Harris or you take Jayden Higgins, I think they all have a possibility that they somehow get worked into their offense. But I really loved Burden coming out of the pre-draft process, and I think that being tied to a quarterback like Caleb Williams is going to pay dividends.
Yeah. Do you want to just like alternate saying a name, just finish the draft back and forth?
Yeah, why not?
All right, I'll go Woody Marks.
Okay, I think that's pretty solid there, and then I will end up taking Tre Harris here, actually, and I think we started to get some more involvement from him as well this last week with the Chargers.
Yeah, then I'll take Elic Ayomanor. I think that we've seen some upside there. He seems like he has the potential. The Titans' offense has been horrible, but he's honestly been their best offensive player probably so far this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me just take a look through here. I mean, to me right now, Chuck has been nowhere near the field. I am going to take Jayden Higgins here.
Yeah, good pick. I think at this point, I'll just go ahead and take Kaleb Johnson. I know that we've seen nothing really from him yet, but at the end of the second, I think it's still worth a shot.
Yeah, and I think if you could buy him for a third or something roughly around there, I think it will hopefully pay off for you in the end. And then my last pick to end off this draft is going to be Arroyo. So again, tight end premium, somebody who was taken in the top 3 rounds of the NFL draft and has shown a little bit with Sam Darnold and the Seahawk offense. But that'll kind of wrap up the show and where we're at with that. But you can kind of see here, things have changed a lot, right? And I think really the takeaway here is that first round and where some of these guys have really risen. Of course, with one of the greatest rises with Emeka Egbuka being that wide receiver 1 from this class, and now being argued as a top 10 wide receiver in Dynasty. And some of these other guys, again, Quinshon Judkins has risen. So we've seen a lot of the draft board change. And we're going to probably try to do another one of these and, towards the end of the season and see how things have changed around then. Has Cam Ward started to make a change in the offense, or does he continue to fall? Or does Jaxson Dart and Cam Skattebo, do they continue to rise? So it's going to be interesting to see how things go over the next really 13 weeks, 12, 13 weeks. But guys, hit us up on the Discord. Definitely subscribe, like, follow, just reach out to us. You can follow me at Dynasty FF. You can follow Austin on X at Dynasty and Austin MJ. Any other thoughts as we kind of head out here, Austin?
I think this is fun. Good exercise to do to kind of evaluate where everybody's at. It'd be fun to keep tracking as we go and doing another one of these and reflecting on where we were at in week 6-7 versus where we end up.
Absolutely, and we'll be hitting you guys with some mock drafts here coming up soon in regards to, I'm hoping we can do another startup. I'm hoping we can get into some other stuff towards as the season starts to head to, it's kind of its fever pitch of towards the end of the season. But definitely feel free to reach out to us, get connected with us, and we will see you guys in the next one.
Yep, sounds good.